Welcome back. This is your weekly edition of the MMA Oddsbreaker Fight Breakdown Show with Nick Kalikas and Frank Trigg. This week, of course, we're going to break down the Fox Sports card, Fight Night 68, Henderson versus Boach. This one is, Nick and I were talking as we always do before we start recording. This one's a little tough because it's like last week's card. You don't really want to, we'll get into it. It's really frustrating for me because everyone knows how biased I am when it comes to Henderson. And everyone knows how biased I am when it comes to Rothwell. So this is kind of a difficult card for me, and Mitrione as well, who's the co-main event. But first, let's talk about Rothwell and Mitrione. For you to put the odds on this one, how difficult was it for you as an odds maker to get this odd put down correctly when you first opened up the line?
Well, I mean, right now, all the momentum is definitely on Mitrione's side as far as fan appeal, as far as, what he's done more recently. I know that Ben Rothwell's had some pretty impressive wins as of late as well, but I still think more of the MMA betting community, more of the MMA diehard fans have a little bit more respect for Mitrione. So it wasn't hard to open Mitrione the favorite, but where exactly to put the line, because I believe that this is one of his toughest tests to date, no doubt about it. I mean, Rothwell's a true veteran. And he's been on, like I said, an extreme role himself. I mean, coming in off of big win over Overeem, he seems to be taking the sport a lot more serious. I think even though Rothwell has a ton of experience, this is the best Ben Rothwell that we've seen to date, honestly. So a lot of question marks all over both guys here because, like I said, when Mitrione finally faces, I think, the upper tier guys, and Rothwell, you could consider him that. I know a lot of fans might not agree with that, but I do. I think that he's one of the better heavyweights in the UFC, but you got to give Mitrione a lot of credit. I mean, all of his fights have been in the UFC, and look at his record. He's 9-3. So the guy has had to learn basically as he goes. I mean, he's had to progress his career pretty fast, and he's been in deep waters, and he's come through amazingly, really. So much credit to Mitrione.
You look at Rothwell's record at 34-9, 20 KOs. You know, he's got 20 wins by KO, which is more knockouts than Mitrione has fights. So, but then you look at Mitrione's record, he's 9-3. Of those 9 wins, 8 of them are by knockouts. You're like, well, Mitrione's got a hard overhand right. Rothwell's got a hard overhand right, but Rothwell's been in more heated, deeper water competition. So you kind of have to look at it from a layman's term, like, oh, well, this Rothwell guy must be the better bet because he's got the stronger record, he's got more KOs, and he's on a bit of a run. If you're a layman, take out all the expertise that you have. Take out everything. You're some new guy just got hooked on MMA betting. And obviously you're looking at this line without the line coming out yet, and you're looking at the paper, where do you think he's going to put his money?
I think you would probably, well, it'd be tough too because, like I said, Mitrione's, even though he has a shorter record, it's still pretty impressive overall. So it'd be tough, but I still think you would lean a little bit more towards experience in that point. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you're going to look at it like that, for sure.
Now let's break down what are the odds on this one. I got to feel like that Mitrione's the favorite.
Yeah, he's almost a 2-1 favorite. He's minus 185 right now. The comeback is around plus 160 for Ben Rothwell. So yeah, he's a decent favorite. Again, anything under 2-1 is a very competitive fight that could realistically be a coin flip type of fight. So that's what you're seeing here in this fight as well. I mean, both guys can make a strong case to win this fight, and both of them have looked really good recently as well. So it is definitely a tough one.
Are you stating now that this one is going to be a dog or pass situation?
Yeah, I don't think I could lay the juice, especially as it's close to 2-1. Even though that's not really that much juice to lay on a competitive fight like that, but still, I still think it's almost a dog or pass situation, similar to what we covered last week. But both the favorites did come through last week. So as far as a pick goes, you got to pick Mitrione. I mean, his athleticism, his speed, his knockout power. He's got confidence coming into this fight as well. I just feel like if Mitrione can't get him out of there in the first round, then it's going to get interesting in round 2 and round 3 because Ben Rothwell's been there. He's been in deep waters before again. I think he's been tested by better fighters throughout his career overall. So I think Rothwell, we could see him start taking over in round 2 and round 3 and possibly even finishing Mitrione. Let's not forget, Mitrione has been knocked out before. I mean, that was to Roy Nelson. And Nelson does that obviously to a lot of people, and he's got that crazy knockout power. Now, Rothwell doesn't have quite that one-punch knockout power that Nelson does, but he still has a ton of power. And if he finds it, your chin, he's going to knock you out as well. So I think later this fight goes, it benefits Rothwell a little bit more, especially with confidence. He's looked great as far as cardio goes. Both these guys for heavyweights, they're going to come into this fight in shape. So you got to respect that. But I think it's Mitrione's fight if he wins it early. But if it goes to the cards, we're going to see a close decision. Maybe Rothwell pulls it off. Or as it goes, maybe Rothwell does catch Mitrione as well.
Well, from a straight pick, I'm taking Mitrione. From a betting standpoint, I'm stating dog or pass as well. So we're in agreement again. Yep. We had this problem last week. And remember, ladies and gentlemen, last week both favorites came through. If you want to put any weight onto these fights, but I suggest that you don't, because every fight is an individual Kalikas what can actually happen. Like there's always stuff that goes on, especially with these fights down in New Orleans. And I remember Mitch Rohn, he's kind of a party kid. He likes being out. He likes being around. He's in New Orleans right now. Is there going to be any kind of distraction? Which is another factor to kind of weigh into it. Where Rothwell's, he's that Wisconsin kid. Is kind of like, I don't want to say he's Forrest Griffin, aw shucks, but he is definitely a kid that he's got a lower lifestyle, a slower lifestyle. His parents owned a restaurant, ran it for a very long time, and that's what he was kind of raised doing. So he's one of those guys that doesn't get distracted too much because he's always got something else on his mind. I don't know if it's going to be a factor or not. I'm just putting it out there for the folks at home, get ready to lay their bets, save all the information. Main event, man. This one, I'm not going to say much on because everybody knows at home I'm biased when it comes to Henderson. He's a friend of mine. We trained together. We went through the wrestling ranks together. He obviously was the better wrestler than I was. So this one, I'm going to stay completely out of it. I'm just going to ask questions and let everybody else make their choices on this one versus Tim Boetsch, the Barbarian, because I like Tim too. Tim's a great guy, but obviously my history is 20 years worth when it comes to Dan. We're looking at Emery record with Henderson of 30-13, 14 wins by KO. He's the first man to beat the greatest of all time, Fedor Emelianenko. He's beat Hua, which he wants to kind of do it again. He's already stated he wants to make that fight happen again. Bisping and Franklin and Boetsch, 18-8 with 8 wins via KO. So they're pretty close as far as percentage-wise within the record. He beat Okami, Lombard, Dalloway, and Tavares. I gotta think it hurts me to even say this, to be honest with you, but I'm trying to be as open-minded as I can. Boetsch has got to be the favorite.
Yeah, he is, and that's a little bit surprising to me as well. I mean, setting the line, it was a real head scratcher because, again, it's Dan Henderson. I mean, if you look at him, he's a legend in the sport. I mean, he's accomplished so much. He's had one of the toughest resumes and impressive resumes throughout his career that any MMA fighter has. I mean, so the guy's obviously a Hall of Famer. Dan Henderson is just, throughout his career, like I said, just amazing. I mean, what he's accomplished. So it's hard to imagine because if this fight were a few years back, there's no way Boetsch would be the favorite in this spot. I mean, Boetsch, again, got to give him a lot of respect too. He's a tough guy. He has a lot of good attributes he brings to the table as well. But still hard to believe that Henderson is an underdog. But you got to remember now, he is close to turning 45 years old. Yeah. And at that point, your body's not going to quite be where it was at one point, and in his career, his chin he's taken a little bit more punishment, so it seems like his chin, even though he's had a tremendous chin throughout his career, is starting to soften up a little bit. He's being clipped, getting rocked, he's being knocked down, knocked out. So, that's definitely it comes with age. None of us can help that, obviously. So I think a lot of bettors out there are just going to kind of fade Henderson at this point, thinking, okay, the guy doesn't have much left in the tank. Boetsch is just a little bit fresher. He's got a lot of power. Boetsch is very strong. So I don't think Henderson's going to be able to ragdoll him around and control him and wrestle him like that. So Boetsch, throughout the fight, as the fight goes, he has that puncher's chance possibly to land that knockout punch. And to me, honestly, I know that Henderson has the better wrestling credentials, but at 185, his wrestling hasn't been what it is, honestly, at 205. I think he's been better at 205 than he has throughout his career at 185. So you got to factor that in as well. So at 185, I just don't feel that Henderson is as strong as he can be. And again, with the age factoring in, and Boetsch has looked pretty good overall recently as well. So you do have to slightly lean towards Boetsch in this spot because he is, again, a hard guy to stop, a hard guy to finish. I think the wrestling will be actually close. I wouldn't be surprised if Boetsch actually gets on top of Henderson on this fight at one point or another either. So, and then again, you got to just favor Boesch's chin just slightly at this point as well.
I will say this. I think Dan Henderson will be a 2-time Hall of Famer. He'll be in on his record alone and what he's done for the sport being, obviously, it's going to lead a lot of weight, even though it doesn't work in the UFC. He won both titles in Pride. He's a 2-time champion in Pride, and almost a 2-time champion at 2 different weight classes, rather, in the UFC. And then his fight with Hua will absolutely be inducted into the Hall of Fame once the time is ready as a fight. So he'll be inducted twice in the Hall of Fame, in my personal opinion. And to be honest with you, the way Boetsch's career has been going as of late, he made the move to work out with Marcus Davis out in Maine. He's just spending a lot of time with Davis and does his training camp. Still lives back in the Pacific Northwest, but moves out there for the 6 to 8 weeks for his training camp to be with Marcus and spends a lot of time. This time, I think Marcus came up for a couple 4 weeks out to the Barbarian's house, and then they switched him back down to Maine and finished up the training camp. That Boetsch will be one of those guys that everyone's going to be talking about. He's always going to be in there. He's always going to be game. And if he hangs in long enough, he quite possibly could be recognized for being in the Hall of Fame too, depending on how the rest of his career goes from now forward. This fight, like I said, guys, is tough for me. I'm always going to lean on Henderson. I'm always going to go that way for Henderson. But for you, Nick, what are you calling this one? Is this a dog or pass? Is this one a parlay fight? Is this one leave completely alone all the way around? Or are you going to pick this one and go get done inside the distance?
Well, it's almost a similar fight that we were just talking about again, like last week as well. I'm gonna pick Boach to win the fight, but at the same time, overall, I think you got to give. It's a dog or pass situation. I know. See, the TRT factor comes into play here as well. I mean, obviously Henderson is now off TRT, so we'll see what kind of impact that has on him. A lot of people are thinking he's not going to have the power, and what he did being on TRT, obviously overall, with the strength and everything that the TRT confidence wise, I mean, what it does for your body, he's not going to have that. So a lot of people are doubting him there as well. I think he still has that H bomb, regardless TRT or not. He's going to be a dangerous fighter. So it is hard to lay 2-1, even against a 45-year-old Dan Henderson at this spot. Because you know what? If you look closer at Bosch's resume, I mean, like I said, he's looked okay recently, but he could be on a severe losing streak as well. I mean, he was losing that fight to Tavares before he ended up catching Tavares in the second round. And then that win against CB Dalloway was actually very controversial. A lot of people believe that Dalloway actually got that nod as well. So Bosch would be on a heck of a skid right now, too. So this fight is more of a toss-up than the current odds indicate. But again, factoring everything in, you kind of have to lean a little bit more towards Bosch. But I think it's like the Rothwell situation. Hard to lay juice on either one of these fights. I think it's a dog or pass situation.
Okay, I'm going to change subject on you real quick. Just because we're talking about TRT with Henderson, the UFC has now come out with their new drug policy. It's going to be a huge deal. One of the fighters came out there and says there's going to be a lot of guys. You can see a lot of different body types coming in now, guys falling off the rankings. As an odds maker, you don't know who's on and who's not. But now with the new stringent testing, is it going to be a lot more difficult for you to do your job making odds, because now you have to factor in, hey, this guy was on TRT in the past. He's been caught for steroids like Vitor. He's been caught in the past. We have to kind of look at it now that he's getting tested in competition, out of competition. He's having to get blood work and urine all the time, so it's going to be a lot harder for him to cheat, or anybody to cheat. I'm not saying that Vitor's cheating, ladies and gentlemen. Let's not start sending all the God quotes to me again and blow me up. But the reality of it is he was a cheater in the past. He got caught for it. Now it's a question of what's going to happen with the rest of the field, all the other 500 guys UFC has under contract. Is it going to change how you have to look at making odds?
Yeah, you know what? It really all depends. I don't think it's going to make a huge impact, especially right away, because we're going to have to really see what the guys do look like and how they do perform. I mean, if we see some drastic physical changes in fighters that we're surprised about, I mean, honestly, there's a lot of fighters out there that you can just kind of assume that are that have been taking juice, whatever. So but then there's a lot of people that we're going to be surprised about, I'm sure, like you said, some of the physical changes that we're going to see. So I don't think it's going to factor in much, because you have to look at it from the general public's perception. And I think there's still, if a fighter's popular, if he has a good skill set, they're going to bet that fighter, even if he's coming off of TRT or whatnot. I think in that situation, until they see maybe him not perform as well in that first fight. So really, I mean, from here moving forward, it's going to be a big indicator. I don't think it's going to have an immediate impact on the lines, but moving farther ahead in the future, I think it will. Okay. So I am going to have to take that in consideration for sure. And again, it did factor in a little bit with the Henderson fight as well.
Thanks, Nick. I really appreciate the insight. Obviously, this card is a fight card, fight night card, so you can see everything can be seen on Fox Sports 1, except for the first two fights of the night, obviously on UFC Fight Pass. This is going to be, it's a great night. Once again, I want to give a nod to Sean Shelby and to Joe Silva, the matchmakers, for putting it together and making our job so tough. It's so much more fun when our job is this tough. We almost have to call it in when the fight's easy to call, easy to look at. You're like, oh yeah, definitely that fight's going to win. This is becoming very difficult for us to do our jobs, to really get it out there.
Yeah, you know what? Actually, from top to bottom, not just these two fights, but from top to bottom, this is a tremendous card. It might not have the huge star power that everybody's used to, but if you look at the odds, I mean, most fights are 2-1 or under. Yeah. I mean, you don't typically see that. So that's competitive fights from top to bottom, and I think we're going to see a very exciting fight. And a lot of fights, could realistically go either way. So you're absolutely correct. I mean, if people look closer, this is one of the better cards that the UFC's put on this year. Really.
That's Nick Kalikas. He's the Oddsbreaker. I'm Frank Trigg. I'm the Hall of Famer. This is the MMA's Oddsbreaker Fight Breakdown Show. We'll talk to you next week.